Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts here today be holy and acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Don't worry, I'm not preaching another giving sermon. We got that done last week. Now, we know the woman, the widow, does give money. And I think we do a significant injustice to this text when we only focus it and whittle it down to that financial giving, to the conversation about how we give, or how much we give, or how little we give, or when we use this as a tithing sermon more than anything else. The fact is that she gave her last 2 copper coins, the last of what she had, to the temple, so they could do the mission, so they could do the work. She sacrificed that last bit of what she had to God with trust and with hope that things would, that she would make a difference in the world with her gift. Now, over the course of this week, preparing for this sermon, I got the chance to talk to some wonderful ladies as we use this text to do the PWs. And I read and I sat with it, and we kind of all agreed in the PW meeting that this is a much larger context and narrative than about how much money we give. We all sort of agreed that there was something bigger, that maybe it's more about the sacrifice the widow makes versus how much, or that she sacrifices money, but rather just the sheer sacrifice that it is a sacrifice to her. Jesus points out she fully sacrificed. She gave everything she possibly could have given up to the temple, to God, to that community. Now, today is Veterans Day. Today is a day that we recognize those people who have served, those who are living and those who are dead, those people who have given of themselves in ways that I haven't. I haven't. These individuals, some have chosen, some were drafted to serve this country in life-giving ways. It's a perfect example of sacrifice. Sacrifice of life for some, sacrifice of time, sacrifice of family. And unfortunately, the reality is we often forget those families that are left at home. We should have a Families of Veterans Day to appreciate what they gave up, all that they give up, all they sacrifice as their loved ones go to some faraway place to potentially be in harm's way, to serve. You know, we celebrate that day as a country, and we celebrate who they were or who they are and what they fought for or what they served for, what they sacrificed for our freedom, we say, for the Constitution, for the sheer right to be in this place, worshiping the God that we choose to worship the way we want to worship. For that freedom. And also for the freedom of our Jewish brothers and sisters to worship the way they want to. We believe and we celebrate them because of what they have sacrificed for, hopefully making the world a better place. Veterans Day used to be known as Armistice Day. To celebrate the armistice, the end of a world war. To celebrate the lives that were lost worldwide in hopes for freedom and for peace. We celebrate their sacrifice, the armistice sacrifices and the veteran sacrifice, because it is to protect future life from future wars. That's why Armistice Day was celebrated. It wasn't to celebrate war or those who went to war, but it was to remember those who died so that we didn't have to go through that cycle of war and death again. It was to celebrate those who were willing to sacrifice so that future generations didn't have to do so again and again and again. This sacrifice we celebrate, I think, points us in a direction towards this text as well. The sacrifice that the widow makes is a trust that her gift will make it so that others don't have to fall apart, don't have to be in the position she is, where she has only 2 copper coins, but that through her giving, through her sacrifice, others will be lifted up. So we sit down with this text, we see that Jesus says, hey, just a chapter ago, he went into the temple, and he is appalled by what he sees. He sees the tables of the tax collectors and the money changers. He sees the animals being sold for sacrifices at outrageous prices. He is stunned by the exploitation of the people. And so he flips the tables over. He creates a whip and drives the people and the animals out. And he says, "You have made my Father's house into a den of robbers. It's supposed to be a house of prayer." And then we come to this. He has been teaching and preaching, and he sits with his disciples and the others who will listen, and he says, "Listen, don't be like the scribes. Don't be like them. Don't be like the scribes." He's frustrated. He's broken. There's a sense of brokenness as he goes into the temple to see what it's become, to see how the people are doing what they're doing. He warns his disciples, don't be like them. Don't go stand on the street corners and say fancy prayers so that people will listen to you. Don't wear long robes and fancy... That long robes thing, they tell me afterwards. Don't wear the long robes. Don't wear the fancy suits. The fancy jewelry, the dresses. Don't wear the things so that you look more self-important than you actually are to the people. But be warned against that. Don't seek the best seats so that you can be the most important. I mean, if you're given the best seat, give it to the poor person. We hear that story somewhere else in Scripture. They're takers. They're destroyers. It says they take and they say long prayers and they devour the widow's houses. We hear about the widow here in a minute. They do all of this. They do this whole faith thing. They do this whole religion thing so that people will see them. Jesus says, don't be like those people who manipulate faith so they can have power. Don't be like those who have stolen and take and destroy lives in the name of faith. And then he goes and sits down after he's just absolutely railed against the establishment of leadership. And he sits down across from the treasury. And as they sit, the wealthy come. And they put their lump sums. Now, the temple had a cornerstone on doing budgets right. Because according to Jewish law, there was only allowed to be one temple in each place. So there was no First Presbyterian Church and Lutheran Church and Methodist Church. There was just the church. So there really wasn't a problem with budgets because everybody just gave to that temple. So the wealthy come and they're putting their big gifts in, but they're not really doing much. They're just putting their gifts in. They're not really sacrificing anything. People flowing through putting their tithe and their gifts in. And then this little old widow who, if you remember what Jesus just said, is being devoured by the scribes, by the elite, by the wealthy, by the religious leaders. And she prayerfully drops 2 little copper coins. Drops them right in there. If it wasn't for Jesus, it'd be completely unnoticed. If it wasn't for Jesus, no one would have even cared. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious leadership would have went, 2 more copper coins. Doesn't matter, it didn't make a difference. But Jesus points it out, and he gets excited. I think he gets really excited. And he perks up as she comes in and he says, Dad, that right there is what I'm talking about. That woman, that widow has it. She's got it figured out. That's what we're supposed to do. She's put in everything she has. She's given every ounce of who she is with trust and hope in God so that it'll change the world, that it'll make a difference. She has sacrificed more than all those other ones. Now, Jesus doesn't say those other ones are bad. He does not judge them. He does not say they are bad, that they are not good, that their gift is terrible. He doesn't say that. It's not even close to in there. But what he does say is he specifically points out the widow and says, look at that. That's what I'm talking about. That kind of sacrifice, that kind of trust, that kind of life is what we're supposed to lead. Watch her. Live out her example. This comes after last week when Jesus, the scribe, comes to him and says, hey, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus says, love your God with everything you possibly can, with all of your heart, soul, mind, strength. And I'll go one further and say, love your neighbor as yourself. This comes right after that. Comes on the heels of him saying, you got to love God with everything you have, which also then requires some sort of sacrifice. The scribes are takers. It's unfortunate. We've seen it. We see it. It's no different today than it was then. There are takers. There are people who want to just take. They want to have more. They take and they destroy. These scribes, the Pharisees, the religious establishment. The religious establishment is in bed with the Roman Empire. They don't want you to think they are what they are. And as they do so, they continue to benefit and reap the benefits. So they get the money that is exploited from the people. And they're able to have big fancy robes and flashy chariots and the nicest houses. And they're able then to take and manipulate the system. We've seen this kind of exploitation even now. We've seen it. We've seen it from the assault cases in churches in Pennsylvania that have come out that were covered up. Over and over again, it comes to light that this is happening. The abuse of power. We've seen it with the exploitation of the televangelists who say, if you send me a little seed money, right? Give me a little bit. I need another private jet. Jesus warns us against this kind of behavior. He warns us about using faith to get ahead. Using faith to climb the ladder. Coming to church so that we're seen by someone else who's important, who might get us a raise or a better job. Well, they're a good Christian. Move them on up. Jesus warns us about this kind of faith and lifestyle. He points at the scribes and says, this is not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be in the faith for what you get. Faith is not about what you get out of it. It's not about what you can get from it. Not even when you come on Sundays. It's not about what you can get out of this. But rather it's about what we're going to put into it. How much of ourselves? What are we willing to give up to do this? It's not about what we get out of when we go on a mission trip, or it's not even, frankly, about getting into heaven. Faith is not about what we receive. It's not about what we can earn or garner. It is so much more. Jesus doesn't put the scribes and this widow together for no reason. They're in it for what they can get. And she's in it because she's willing to